Jayden Daniels does it again. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about the Commanders' 36-33 win over the Philadelphia Eagles, focusing on, of course, Jayden Daniels and how he lives for these big time moments. We're going to get into all that, folks, but let's start with a couple of things. One, the playoff race. Because of the win, now Washington, all they have to do is win one more game and they're in regardless of what happens to anybody else. Seattle losing to Minnesota basically eliminates the Western team from a wild card spot. So the Rams or Seattle or whomever is going to have to get in by winning the division. The only team that can hurt the Commanders or beat out the Commanders are the Atlanta Falcons. They'd have to win in at Washington next week. And then the Commanders would have to lose in Dallas in the finale. And Atlanta, of course, would have to beat Carolina in the finale as well. So Commanders are in really, really good shape, folks. And it's because of an improbable win. I don't know. It's hard to describe just what we saw today. And I don't know if I'm going to do a good job of doing that because there was so much going on. 5 turnovers. Do you know when the last time they won a game with 5 turnovers? 2002. Do you know how many games they've won like doing that since 1983? 3. That's how improbable it is. And then you're doing it against a team that had won 10 in a row, a team that is fighting for the home field advantage in the NFC. Now, I know Jalen Hurts was out. He got knocked out in the first quarter. That, of course, is a big loss for Philadelphia. However, the Eagles still scored. Now, he makes a difference in that offense for sure. But the person who makes that offense go is Saquon Barkley. What makes that offense really, really go is that offensive line. They still had A.J. Brown, still had Devontae Smith. And the biggest thing is the Commanders hung up 36 on a defense that I thought was maybe was arguably the NFL's best going into this game. That to me is what stands out. So yes, Jalen Hurts wasn't there, but my goodness, when would you ever expect a team to win a game when they have 5 turnovers and you're playing a team of the caliber of the Eagles? You just don't expect that, folks. And they did it in a day where their run game was nothing. And this is how special Jayden Daniels is. I'm going to get into all that for sure. But let's start with the scene after the game, right? So you had Bobby Wagner and Terry McLaurin embracing it. Wagner waiting for McLaurin off the field, and they were embracing a big embrace as they go before they head into the locker room. Like these guys are pumped up. Those are 2 of the big time leaders, of course, in this team. You had Sam Cosmi lifting up one of the ownership group members, Mitch Rales, lifting him high up the ground as he came as Rales greeted them coming off the field. These guys are pumped, and they really, really, really enjoy one another. It was a big weekend for this organization because of the bill that still has to be signed into law by the president that would give the district control of the land, the lease of the land at the RFK site for the next 99 years, which would then allow the Commanders to possibly build the stadium in that area. That was a huge win Saturday morning. This is a huge win Sunday. What a weekend for this organization. But I'll tell you what, folks, if there's a reserve of karma being spent on this franchise for what you guys have been through for 2+ decades under the previous owner, you're being rewarded with this kind of an effort by this organization and by number 5 in particular. Listen, number 5 was the number of the day. 5 turnovers, 5 touchdown passes by number 5. So just a tremendous win for them. And like I said, I don't care that Jalen Hurts was out because you still had to come back against a really, really good defense. And this kid kept doing it. And that's why we're sitting here talking about a win and only one more win for a playoff spot. And then your chance to win 11 games for the first time since the 1991 season. Folks, I've covered this team for 30 years now. I've never covered a team that won 11 games in the regular season. The last time they won 10 was in 2012. So just a very unlikely win because of all those situations. And then you go to the locker room and you watch the video of Dan Quinn talking to the players. You can see how close this group is when you watch that, and at the end of it, you have Terry McLaurin presenting a game ball to Dan Quinn because he became the first coach in franchise history to win 10 games in his first season. remember, this is a guy that people thought, oh, he was an afterthought in their coaching search, which was BS at the time. And I told you that. And here we are now. So, but again, this comes down to Jayden Daniels. And listen, it takes everybody to win this game, right? It took Frankie Louvu getting an interception that really kind of got him going to get another touchdown. It takes a lot, right? I'll get more on the defense down the road, but it's not just Jayden Daniels, but he's the guy that makes this work. He's the guy that gives them hope and the belief that they can go out and do it. It's funny because after the game, the whole talk is like about his poise and calmness in the pocket. It just not even the pocket, but just in these situations. And as Sam Cosme told me, he said, because of the way he is, it keeps everybody else calm. And he even said, like, I'm glad he's our QB. But they've been saying that all year. This is nothing new. What we saw today is a continuation of what makes this kid special. In the final 2 minutes of games this season, he is as I say right now, because sometimes this changes based on how the numbers go in other games. But as I talk right now, he is the NFL's highest rated quarterback in the final 2 minutes of games. The only one rated ahead of him is Dak Prescott, but I'm going to exclude him and say quarterbacks who have started at least 10 games this year, because Dak Prescott only threw like 5 passes, I think, in the final 2 minutes of a game. Daniels has thrown 26. So, and he has an NFL high 4 touchdown passes in the final 2 minutes. So this is who he is. And he's just a special player. I don't know how else to say it. 3 touchdown passes in the fourth quarter. A 4th and 11 scramble to gain 29 yards where he swerves through the defense and gets a big block by Zach Ertz. Now that Ertz is coming across the middle. I think he blocked Cooper DeJean. If he doesn't block him, then I think he may have gotten Daniels before the first down. But he doesn't block him because Ertz gets him, swerves around, and picks up 29 yards. And it's funny because it's the kind of play. Somebody asked him the other day about his scrambles, and I remember one of his quarterback coaches growing up, Ryan Porter, telling me that one of the things that makes him special when he runs, it reminds him of watching him play, or when he was playing flag football, that he would just the way the way you move your hips just to kind of avoid having your flag pulled. That's the way he kind of maneuvers through a defense, and it's why he's so effective in tight spaces. It just may be a skill, but it's probably why he was really good in flag football. But anyways, that's the kind of stuff that happens to this young man, and that's why it's really going to be fun for everybody to watch. He's a rookie, folks. He's only a rookie. And that's the thing, is even Cosme said, like, he's doing all this stuff, or McLaurin said, and he's going to get better. There's still another level for him to reach to, because it's one of the things that McLaurin, I think it was, I can't remember who it was, told me this the other day, but that one of the things that stood out, and I wrote a story on Daniels over the weekend. One of the things that stood out was that, he doesn't get complacent. And I think that's a key, right? He doesn't get complacent. And because, it's Marcus Mariota. Geez, my memory's going already. Marcus Mariota said one of the things that stood out to him is that he doesn't get complacent. So, it would be easy when you have the success he has had early in his career to just kind of think, oh, this is how it's going to be. But instead, he's a guy that continues to show up every day, the same time, and work, go through the walkthroughs, do all this stuff, be prepared. And we're seeing the results of that now. It's funny because the situational work matters here. And one of the things, and I wrote this story on Dan Quinn about a month or so ago, and in there I talked about some of the lessons you learned from Atlanta, one of which is that he does a lot more situational work than he did in Atlanta. And Logan Paulson has said they did a lot of it with the Falcons, but it's more now, to the point that, players were saying, like, it felt like they were in practice on that last drive, that game-winning drive. So it felt like it was at practice, just the way they got up to the line, getting the ball out, getting the cadence out, the play out, etc. There was no panic to anybody because they've been through this before. So Terry McLaurin even said that, like, Dan Quinn would early in training camp, would get on guys during these situations in practice if they weren't handling it right, to the point where he yelled at McLaurin, or got on McLaurin one time because McLaurin tried to get extra yards in a situation where he needed to get out of bounds rather than because you need the clock. So they drilled it that hard. And so he would put on, like, 35 seconds left. You're at this yard line. You need a touchdown. A minute left. You need to go 60 yards or 50 yards for a field goal attempt. those kind of things routinely they would do. But he would get on guys if it wasn't done right, if they weren't doing it to the speed or the level they needed to. They worked and worked and worked on it. We see it pay off time and time again for these guys in those end of the game situations. I mean, this is back-to-back games, folks, where it comes down to almost pretty much the final. It is to the final play. Get the 2-point stop against the Saints. You had a Hail Mary against the Bears. You had a game-winning drive against the Giants. You had an end of the, near end of the game, incredible touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin against the Bengals. I mean, it just keeps happening. And yes, some of that is like, oh, it's hard to sustain that. Well, yeah, but it's also the residue of what they do during the week. And to me, it's a lot of this is just how Jayden Daniels is. As he said, he loves being in these situations, and Dan Quinn said that he became a heavy hitter tonight. And I agree, like that was impressive. And again, Jalen Hurts doesn't play defense, folks, and the Eagles had all their defensive guys, and that's a damn good defense. And they, we saw what happened the first time around, and in even this game, saw McLaurin being moved around a lot more. But here's the other part. This is who. So the receivers, Olamide Zaccheaus, 5 catches for 70 yards. Jamison Crowder, 2 catches, 15 yards, but 2 touchdowns. Zaccheaus, 2 touchdowns. These are guys that weren't doing a whole lot last year. Like Zaccheaus was with the Eagles, didn't have a big role. Crowder ended up here last year and was on IR for a lot of the year, but you stay sharp, and he's a veteran. There's still things he can do, and you saw it on his touchdown pass, on his touchdown catches, because he just knows how to run routes and he gets open. He knows how to get open quick. He's got good feet. That's something he gives them. But like Daniels is not throwing to a whole group of, he doesn't have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. He has Terry McLaurin, who's a fantastic receiver, having a great year, by far should be a Pro Bowl player, and career best 12 touchdowns, but he's throwing to guys who were not, these are Zaccheaus, Brown, Crowder. Like, these aren't guys that maybe with other teams, they're not doing anything. But these guys have found a way to make it work, and Daniels has found a way to make it work. But you go look at Crowder's touchdown catches. The first one, just a really good route, because he came off the line. He was in the middle of a 3-receiver set to the right, comes off the line very, very slow, and then kind of does a little hesitation move. The safety, Gardner Johnson, kind of forces him to sit, and he just curls behind him over the middle for the touchdown. On the game-winning score, this is where the practice comes in, because they practiced this play on Friday, got the same look they got on Sunday, which is 2 safety look. And you have Crowder coming over the middle, and there's in the middle of the field, the 2 safeties, there's a linebacker there, but they also have to worry about Zach Ertz underneath. So Crowder just gets open, and just a really good job by Daniels to find him and deliver another strike. Like this, it just, like I said, it just keeps happening. I don't know how many more superlatives it can get from him or about him, because this is who he is. And it's why when you watch him on the film, it's funny, because I remember having one of my private Zoom sessions, and somebody asked me, or this is before the draft, and this is not meant to disrespect someone else, but it's just talked about like, well, in those last situations, he wants a strong leader in the huddle, and that's why he wanted Drake May. I'm like, the guy you want is this guy, like, because he's done it, and this is what he's proving to do. So again, NFL Rookie of the Year, just wrap it up and give it to him right now. But the throw to Terry McLaurin, just a drop in the bucket, but a terrific catch by McLaurin, an over-the-shoulder catch. And that's, it's funny, because people up here, if you remember Willie Mays making an over-the-shoulder catch in the 54 World Series, you've probably seen some highlights. That's what it reminded people of. But one of the things that Dan Quinn talked about too in his post-game press conferences with McLaurin is just what a good tracker of the ball he is. And that it's why he's such a good downfield target. Deshaun Jackson was like that. Like Deshaun had really, really good speed, of course, but his days as an outfielder in baseball allowed him to really track the ball well. McLaurin is a really, really good tracker as well. Like on that one, it's just over the shoulder, and for him to get his feet in bounds, he's going out of bounds, crossing by the pylon, a tremendous effort by McLaurin. So, man, it's just, and I'll say this too for Crowder. Crowder's always been one of my favorites, because he's just a good dude, and he's a guy that's you talk about a guy that just shows up and does his job. That's Jamison Crowder. And as Quinn said, when you go on IR for a couple months during the season, it's tough because you're working all year to get to this point. Then you play a few games. Now you're going on IR, and you don't know when you're coming back. Now Crowder, I think, was probably ready a few weeks before he came off, but this is when they've needed him, and he delivered. And so, like I said, one thing he does really well is he wins quick off the line. And that's what we saw. That's when you're in that red zone. It gave him another target because of that. I mean, Crowder's not a tall guy, folks, but he was a good red zone target today because of how he ran his routes. Veteran savvy. And I think, the same with Zacchaeus. Like, those guys are not big targets, but yet they know how to run routes. And Kingsbury and this offense continues to put them in situations where they have opportunities. And Daniels finds them. And when you have a guy that can find you and find a lot of guys, like he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys had catches today, 8. And, shoot, Zach Ertz played with a bad shoulder, and that was the shoulder more than the concussion that bothered him. Didn't have a catch until the late, I think it was on the last drive, but they made it work, and Daniels had 82 yards rushing. They only had 114. To win a game like this where the running backs couldn't get anything going again it's impressive. It's also, to be honest, they need to get this run game going better with the backs. We can get into that more during the week, but I think it's something that could be a problem down the road because it's 2 games in a row now where the backs have been stopped. And I think some of that you have to look at how was the offensive line in that area. Now, they gave Daniels time, but how were they in that area? Because when you're watching this game, like the Eagles' offensive line was terrific early on, especially for Saquon Barkley, and it makes a big difference. But second half is where I think that defense really should feel very good because, listen, Barkley he finished with 150 yards. Do you know what he did after halftime? 16 carries, 27 yards. So one of the things that Quinn talked about during the week was, hey, you got to stop him in the second half because he averages like 7 yards a carry in the second half. Well, they did that, but as he kind of joked afterwards, maybe I put too much effort on the second half. Needed to worry a little bit more on the first, but they did a better job of filling gaps. There were times in that, like the 68-yard touchdown run, nobody gets in the gap, and Louvu comes upfield, Wagner gets blocked, Ching gets sealed, nobody's there, easy touchdown. And then the other problem with that one is that Lattimore is playing man coverage, and as Brown's going to block, he takes him out. He took Lattimore out of the play, so there's nobody even on contain on that side. So just a bad breakdown, but they did a much better job. D-line, much better job. And then they were sending, it looked like they were sending Wagner and Louvu a lot more in the second half to pressure Kenny Pickett. One of the things, and this is one thing, like Dan Quinn acknowledges that, it's obviously Pickett is a different quarterback than Hurts. And he said one of the things, like just how effective Hurts is outside the pocket on some of the passing because he can go out there and he's strong. He can break tackles. He said, like, you have a play defended and you still don't get him down because that's what Hurts can do. But they still they started sending more and it was effective. The other problem is too, when you're facing the Eagles, because of what they have in the run game, as Quinn said, it's hard to disguise because of their ability to run it. So you've got to be very careful with it. But they did adjust and they did a good job on Barkley in the second half, and it made a huge difference. And so, man, what a win. Then, the other couple other things. So you had Lattimore going against AJ Brown. Now Marshawn Lattimore suffered had a hamstring issue, didn't go back in the game. Don't know the extent of it. We'll know more about that tomorrow and throughout the week. I mean, listen, man, it's like, this is a guy who has those injuries, and it's why they took a while bringing him back. And if it's another issue, that could be something that, who knows how long that could be, but wasn't a good sign that he had to leave the game because of it. Benjamin St. Juste came in and, gave up a play on the fourth down where he was a little bit off on AJ Brown. And if you make the tackle, then you can stop him and you get the ball back. It was a fourth down and like 11 or something like that, for 4th and 7 or something like that. And then but he not, it's what it is, folks. Don't know more about, but I do know, and one of the reasons why they wanted, we talked about with Lattimore, is getting him against an AJ Brown type. Well, early on, they had a battle, right? But, you'd have to say Brown got the best of him. He had 8 catches for 97 yards, not all on him. I don't know the breakdown on that, but he did draw 3 pass interference penalties against Lattimore. Now, one you could say there was 2 in a row And one of the second one is like, I'm not so sure on that one. But the first one, you saw him grabbing the arm. There's another one, he grabbed him around the waist. So it was, a tough one for Lattimore. But what I like about Lattimore, so if he's able to come back and play, like he's the kind of guy who he doesn't back down from something like that. He's not going to let something like that dent his confidence because, you're right there to make some plays early in the game. He made some plays against him, made a couple plays later. But Brown, certainly that was a matchup where the Eagles were not going to back down from him. And it's not so much they were attacking Lattimore as much as they're going to go to A.J. Brown. Why? Because he's A.J. Brown and he's really, really good. So as good as Lattimore can be, A.J. Brown is a damn good receiver. And so sometimes in this league, the damn good receiver is going to beat you. But I think the bigger thing for Lattimore is not so much what happened against A.J. Brown, because you're kind of right there. It's what's up with the hamstring. And again, we'll know more about that throughout the week. And then, speaking of like guys playing with something, Sam Cosmi was really sick and he had a respiratory sickness, said he was down in his basement for like 2 days. It was pretty bad. Like he was in bad shape. His head felt like it was going to explode. It's just something you have to go through. And he had a fever. I think it was over 103. So I don't know. You go out there and play a few days after you get back from that, you're not at full strength. And there were a couple of times where you wondered about that. How did it impact him? Because I think there was for the fourth down play, looks like he lost his guy there. And you wonder, like, what kind of strength does he have to play in a game like this? And I think after that, it seemed like he settled down. But that's a tough, John Bates went through that as well. I don't know if it was quite to the level of Cosmi, but that was kind of a brutal day, brutal weekend for Cosmi for sure. So last thing, folks, is there's a couple of things. One, there's a reason why Dan Quinn picked for the captains for this week Bobby Wagner, Terry McLaurin, and Jeremy Reeves. As Quinn said, I would follow those guys anywhere. But they knew the magnitude of this game. They knew how significant it could be. I think one of the traits that this team absolutely has, and this is as much as I talk about Jayden Daniels, but it's a trait of this team. Like yes, Jayden Daniels is special, but you have to maintain a certain belief for everybody in this game. And even Daniel said, like, he doesn't think he's going to lose until there's 0 seconds left on the clock. But I think the entire team is that way. And I think they just have a strong belief in what they can do and to just keep fighting. That's the mark of this team. Like, whatever happens from here on out with this program going forward, I think it's, what they've established this year is their mindset. And that's an important thing to have. And I think it's why this team has a chance to really build something fun for the next 5-10 years. So there you go, folks. Special team, big win. Enjoy it. One more win, they clinch a playoff spot. I'll be back on Tuesday morning I'm going to have an episode with Craig Hoffman from the Team 980 talking about this game, talking about the Commanders. There will not be a live stream show Tuesday night. It's Christmas Eve. I'll be with my family. I will be out at the facility on Tuesday because they are having practice. So anyway, folks, I'll be back on Tuesday. So thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.